Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a look at the human heart. And I have a diagram here that will help us understand some of the different parts of the heart. The first thing I want to do is I want to mention to you that when you look at the heart, there are actually two different distinct sides to the heart. And it's just like in anatomic position, when you refer to the right side of a person's body, you're actually referring to their right. So in this particular case, if I were to draw a line that kind of separates things like this, you could see that this is the right side, this is the left. Now you'll notice that the right side of the heart is colored blue and the left side of the heart is colored red, and there's a reason for that we'll get to in a little bit. But before we do that, let me also explain to you how this picture was created, or what version you're looking at. So if you had a human heart in front of you, it wouldn't look like this until we cut it in half. And so what you're actually looking at is a coronal section of a heart where the front portion of the heart is removed, and you're actually looking at the back half of it, and you're looking at the spaces inside of the heart, which are known as the chambers. Okay, so you got 4 chambers all together. You've got the 2 chambers that are the ones that are on top, and those are the ones that are receiving blood. And so you've got a chamber here, and I better use a different color for this side. You got a different chamber there. Those are the 2 superior chambers, and those are known as the atria. So if I were to draw a line here from there to there, that's one atria, that's another, and because one is on the right side, that is the right atria with the blue, and the one on the left with the red is called the left atria. If we were talking about them singly, we'd call them, each one is an atrium. But the key thing there is that they are the things that receive the blood. Now you got chambers that are down below, which are the inferior chambers known as the ventricles. So here's a ventricle down here, here's a ventricle down there, and once again you have one on the right, you have one on the left, and that makes up the 4 different chambers of the heart. Now I'm going to clear the annotations here so that we can kind of take a look at the arrows, because the arrows are significant in that they show the direction of blood flow. Now, bigger picture is this. Blood is going to come into the heart and it's going to leave the heart. And it comes in at 2 different places and it leaves at 2 different places. It's known as a double pump. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a drop of blood from the body. And it could be from the head, it could be from the feet down here. We just say body in general. But once your body is done using the oxygen in the blood, we have to send that blood back into the heart, both from above and below, so that it can come back to the heart and get pumped to the lungs to pick up oxygen. That blood is then going to travel from the atria to the ventricle, from the ventricle out into the lungs, and then once it's in the lungs, it picks up oxygen from the lungs, and now that blood turns red and it comes back into the left atrium and it travels down the left ventricle and it goes out to the body where that oxygen can be used. Once the oxygen is used, the blood turns blue again, it comes back to the heart, and it starts this journey all over again. And it typically takes about a minute for that journey to occur. So once we get a drop of blood in the heart on one side, it's going to travel around the body back to that same portion again in about a minute. So the other thing that's important for you to know is that we want that blood to be traveling in one direction. We do not want it to go backwards. So basically your blood vessels and your heart chambers, those are all allowing for one-way movement of the blood, and that's indicated by these white arrows here. So as you can see, blood comes in and it moves in this direction. Now the question is, what would happen if the blood decided to go backwards like this? Well, if that ever did happen, what would happen is you would see that these little flaps of tissue right here, which are known as heart valves, they would snap shut and the blood would be prohibited from going backwards into the next chamber, and that would actually direct the blood to go in the direction we want it to go. Now, we've got different chambers, or we have different valves located throughout, right? We have what's known as the AV valves. They're called AV valves because they separate the atria from the ventricle. And here are the two AV valves right there. The valve that's on the right side is called the tricuspid valve, and the valve that's on the left side is called the bicuspid valve. And what I try to do to remember that is I take the RI of tri and I link it with the RI of right, and that way I can marry those two together, knowing that the tricuspid valve is on the right side. The reason it's called the tricuspid valve is because there are three flaps of tissue that close, and we'll see those when we look at the pig hearts. The bicuspid valve has, now remember your Latin, bi means two, correct. So we've got a valve on the right side with three flaps. We've got a valve on the left side with two flaps. And those are the AV valves because they separate the atrium from the ventricles on each side. Now we also have these semilunar valves, which are the valves that are located right here. There's a semilunar valve, and there's another semilunar valve. Now the semilunar valve that sends blood, or that keeps the blood from flowing back from the lungs, is the pulmonary semilunar valve, which is right there, because that's going to the lungs. The word pulmonary means lungs. And the semilunar valve that keeps the blood from coming back into the left side of the heart is called the aortic semilunar valve. And so as you look at this, you have to keep in mind that we're going to look at the heart relationship to the four chambers that it has. So you need to know the names and the locations of the four chambers, and you need to know the names and the locations of the four valves that permit blood flowing in one direction. So as we look at this diagram, you see that there are some labeled parts. Now, a couple of the parts we didn't get into. We didn't get into D or F. But I'm hoping that you can identify what letter E is pointing to, what letter A is pointing to, what letter B is pointing to, and what letter C is pointing to. So why don't you take a minute, take a look at that, and see if you can identify those. And then I want you to pause this, because now I'm going to put in the labels. So E, now we can check our answers, is the right atrium. A down here is the right ventricle. B is the left ventricle. And C is actually pointing to one of the AV valves. Now remember, what side of the heart is it on? Is it the right or the left? Hopefully you remembered it's on the left, and therefore we remember that this is the bicuspid valve. Now we'll get into D and F in a little bit, because those are the main blood vessels that come in and out of the heart. And as you know, it's important for us to not only know four chambers, four valves, but you also need to know four main blood vessels. It might be easier to take a look at the blood vessels on the next page. So the main blood vessels that are coming in and out of the heart are going to be located, these main trunks that are coming out. So in this particular case, there's a big blood vessel here and a big blood vessel there. They're actually part of the same blood vessel. There's an inferior one, which is the one at the bottom, and there's a superior one, which is at the top. And the blood vessels that I've drawn in there are called the vena cava. So down here you've got the inferior vena cava. And this one up here, and then this one right there is the superior vena cava. Over on the, so as we follow the blood, as the blood is coming in this direction, goes into the right atrium, into the right ventricle, and up and out, this blood is going to hit this big blood vessel that kind of branches to the right and the left, which is identified as letter F. Now, that's a blood vessel that's carrying blood away from the heart, so that's automatically going to be an artery. One thing that you need to know is that veins carry blood to heart, and that an artery carries blood away from the heart. Because this is carrying blood away from the heart, this is going to be a artery, correct, and we're going to call this the pulmonary artery. Now, once the blood gets out of the pulmonary artery, it's got to come back into the heart. What is it that carries blood back to the heart? That's a vein. Well, right here we've got a series of veins. These are the pulmonary veins because they're carrying blood from the lungs. The word pulmonary means lung, and it's coming back to the heart in a vein. And then the blood travels down this way, and it's going to leave out this big ginormous blood vessel that's carrying blood away from the heart, and this is a very special artery. It's the biggest artery in the body, and it's called the aorta. And so now we should be able to identify that we know all four chambers, all four valves, and all four main blood vessels in the heart.